So hi everyone, I'm Elad Verbin. I'm part of BAV, a new venture fund. I'll talk a bit about myself, but first, what will this talk be? So we're going to talk about privacy on the blockchain. And what I mean by this is I'm going to tell you about some crypto magic called secure multi-party computation that some of you might have heard about and some of you have not. And I think that's a crime because this is how the future of blockchain and decentralization will look. And for some reason, not enough people in the blockchain community know enough about it. So I'm going to tell you about, first of all, I'm going to tell you why you should care. Second of all, I'll tell you what this magic looks like because it's kind of like how to even believe that it's possible, which is, I think, part of the reason it's not gaining a lot of traction. Third, I'll tell you what was done until today with secure multi-party computation and zero knowledge, its sibling, both on the blockchain and off the blockchain. And finally, we'll do an exercise in futurism and we'll step into a time machine and see what multi-party computation will do for us in, let's say, 20 years. And the reason we'll do that is because it's kind of for a very early technology. It's how to imagine what it could do for us, and I want to do this exercise in order to kind of have something to aspire to or a way to come up with new uses. So before we start, a bit about me. So I am a partner in the new BAV, which is a venture fund for Berlin-based deep tech startups, where deep tech means machine learning, but means other foundation technology, blockchain, other things. And we are concentrating on pre-seed and seed rounds. We are both a fund and an incubator and a mentorship program, let's say. And we are now in fundraising mode, but we're interested in attracting new startups and working with new people and getting some bootstrapping going on. And except that, in my day job, like in my training, I'm a computer scientist. Originally did my PhD in Tel Aviv University, did a couple of postdocs in China and Denmark. We'll get to that. Moved to industry, did some algorithmic stock trading, got into the Python community and got into data science. And in my day job, I'm consulting as a data scientist to startups in Berlin. And that's basically what I'm going to do in the venture fund as well, do more kind of consulting in-house for startups. And I am one of the organizers of the PyData meetup, which if you don't know, you should really come, which does both Python and data science. So I'm doing both Python and data science and some blockchain. And if we have time in the end, I'll tell you more about what I'm doing in blockchain space. So how did this all start? When I was doing a postdoc in Denmark, I saw some amazing work done on multi-party computation in Denmark. They had the first real deployment use case in 2008. I saw this in 2010, said, okay, this is the future. Quit academia, had some time to think about it, said, okay, this is definitely going to be the future. Didn't know anything about Ethereum. Then when I heard about Ethereum, I was like, okay, so this has to go in Ethereum as a deployment vehicle, and then we get future of governance, future of auctions, future of everything that I'll tell you about. So I kind of saw this in real life and got interested, and I want to tell you about this. Okay, so privacy on the blockchain. Why should you even care? So is Bitcoin anonymous? Well, the problem, I think a lot of you, I won't do a show of hands, but I think a lot of you will, when I ask the question this way, will say, well, it's not really anonymous, it's kind of pseudonymous, and it's like you can create new accounts, but it can always be traced and stuff like that. But the idea we're selling to the world as the Bitcoin/blockchain community is of an anonymous currency. This is what people think this is. And that's false. So that's a problem. You can trace, if you don't know, you can trace transactions backwards in time. Once any, right, I mean, there's money that flows into accounts and out of accounts, but once someone can link some account to your real details because you ordered some furniture online or drugs, or you bought Bitcoin with a credit card or anything, once someone can put a name on you, they can follow you through the network. you can be diligent and vigilant and use mixers and try to use a new account for each transaction, and that helps to some extent, but we're putting the onus of keeping privacy on the user. That never works, as we know on the internet. So we're not telling people, but actually the situation is if people are very vigilant, they'll be hard to trace. But Bitcoin is not anonymous, and indeed, Coursera apparently has a course about denonymizing Bitcoin. So that's a problem. Luckily, we have a solution, which is Zcash. These are Zuko Wilcox, Eli Ben Sasson, other people. And the reason I'm making sure to note these people is, okay, so Zcash is a truly, or let's call it mostly, private version of internet currency or version of Bitcoin. It is, the way to think about it is that it works like bank transfers, like the privacy features are like bank transfers. If I want to pass Carly sum of money, the only people that will know about this sum of money being passed are me and Carly. The other parts of the other people in the network will know that someone passed money to someone, but they do not know who passed money to whom. That's the point of Zcash, and I am pretty much convinced, I'm not affiliated with them, but I'm pretty much convinced that this works, and part of the reason I'm convinced is because this guy, it was one of the inventors and one of the principal figures in the theory of cryptography of behind zero-knowledge proofs, which is the field that is used to make this magic of truly anonymous transfers a reality. So he's he's the chief scientist or whatever of this startup, and they declare this as a network for truly anonymous transfer of funds. Now, how is this even possible? So there's some magic going on behind the scenes, because Bitcoin. In Bitcoin and in Ethereum, every transfer is on the ledger, right? When I make a transfer to Carly, I come and I say, my account is putting a transfer to Carly's account, and this is published throughout the network and is written on everyone's ledgers. So how is it even possible to make this anonymous? Well, so it's using zero-knowledge proofs, which is a type of cryptographic device that was invented, let's say, in the late 80s or early 90s, mid-80s, and allows you to prove something to someone when the only knowledge they gain from this proof is that it's correct, but they don't learn anything more. So when I come and I want to transfer some money to Carly, I can prove to everyone on the network, I publish something under a truly pseudonymous, I just send it to the network, and then everyone can get convinced that this person who's transferring the funds has enough balance, is not double spending it, but they don't know who that person is. And that's the magic of it. In the second part of this talk, I'll tell you how this kind of thing can even be possible, but for now, I need you to believe me that this kind of magic can work. Now, I still need to tell you why you should care about this. So, the point is that, that's the previous argument. So any sophisticated, right, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And there's a small leap of faith needed here, right? Because the only reason we board a plane and expect it to fly is because we've seen planes flying, and we've been told by other humans that these huge chunks of metal can fly. And the only reason we believe that our communication with the banks or with Gmail or with anyone are secure is because we see this little lock, and we believe that this little lock means that the communication is secure, right? So as humans, we've been habituated to believe that when we see certain, things that don't make any sense, we've been habituated to believe that they actually work, right? Who would have believed 60 years ago that you can communicate with an unknown entity that you've never met over some wires, and that no one else will be able to read the contents of your message, even though they have access to the wire? No one would have believed that. My mother still didn't believe it in the 90s when you started being able to buy books and stuff online, right? But with time, my mother does e-commerce because everyone does e-commerce because it seems fine and no one gets hurt. What I'm trying to convince you today is that there's this thing, zero knowledge and multi-party computation, that's kind of like this. As long as no one believes in it, then no one will ask for it, no one will use it, and there will be a chicken and egg problem. When we start believing in it and using it, interesting new applications like e-commerce, like anything else, would start to arise. So let's do, I need to convince you this is interesting. So let's do a little game or experiment. Suppose you wanted to take Tinder and we want to decentralize all the things. So you want to make a blockchain, an Ethereum equivalent of Tinder, right? Okay, so you want to take Tinder and recreate it on a decentralized system where no one has central access. Right now, Tinder has central access. They can see that I swiped right. They can see that the other person swiped right. If we both swiped right, they start a chat. Otherwise, I never hear of that person. Right? We don't know that each other what we were swiped or anything. Why? Because this is centrally hosted. Right? But if you try to decentralize it, and I'm going to ask you for a second to think about how to create a dApp for decentralized Tinder, you'll see that we have a big problem. And the problem will be with the Ethereum blockchain publishing everything in the clear. So let's take like 20 seconds and think about how you would decentralize Tinder. Okay, so I hope you've seen that this is a hard problem, and the reason is that if you want to communicate with someone, if you want to make your swipe public, then that's fine. You can put it all on the blockchain and everything will be perfect. It will be centrally hosted and the dApp will work and run by gas and there's no central authority. The database is out there on the cloud, on the Ethereum cloud, and everything is fine. But if I want to have some privacy features, I don't want anyone to know who I swiped right on and who I swiped left on, that can't happen because I need to communicate with the dApp and tell it, listen, I swiped right or I swiped left. The problem is that this communication has to be sent in the clear. Suppose I sent it encrypted, right? Suppose I communicate with a dApp, with this Tinder dApp, in an encrypted way. This doesn't happen because the dApp itself, its computation, is run on the Ethereum network. So the on-chain computation has to decrypt my message, and then it's again in the clear, right? So Ethereum does not give any privacy features. It's all in the clear. And that's a problem because we're promising Ethereum is the computer, like the computer of the world, and the memory on the disk of the world and all of that, but there's no privacy inherent in there. Everything is in the clear unless you encrypt it with 80s or 70s cryptography, right? And we'll get to that. My central claim is that in Ethereum world or blockchain world, we're kind of stuck with very few exceptions in the cryptography that was available until the 80s, and we kind of haven't moved beyond that. And I claim that we will move beyond that, we need to move beyond that, and we should already be preparing to what happens when we do implement some interesting cryptographic ideas on the blockchain. But let's move on. So here's another software as a service solution, Gmail. Let's talk about decentralizing Gmail and do the same experiment. How would you do Gmail, but on Ethereum? Okay, so I created the app, and this dApp serves everyone's communication requests, and people send emails and receive emails, and they come and they query and they get their email, and this is not hosted anywhere. And that kind of should work, right? Because it only requires encryption, right? I don't want anyone to read my mail, but that's fine because I can just communicate in an encrypted way and the message is encrypted and then I decrypt it on my own computer. And that's fine except for spam filtering, right? So how do you do spam filtering? Well, Gmail does spam filtering by reading all of our mails, looking for, getting help from us in clicking this is spam, doing some magic machine learning classification task to figure out what spam looks like, and by reading all of this mail, creating spam filters, keeping the spam filters on its servers, and automagically filtering all the spam, right? So that's amazing. How would you do this on a smart contract? Well, so if you think about it, it's kind of hard because there's none of these centralized operations that can be going on, right? You need to somehow apply an algorithm to everyone's emails on the blockchain without anything being in the clear. That's very hard. And then you need to save these filters and apply them again without this being in the clear. So I hope I convinced you that to get to decentralized software as a service services, you will need to add some privacy capabilities to blockchain systems which are not there today. Okay? And if we aim to decentralize all the things, then we better do this. So, in a way, blockchain privacy today is like this little hut that's built only with nails and hammers. I mean, it's fine. It kind of proceeds as it is, but we can't build a skyscraper out of it. And there is there's a chicken and egg problem, right? Because as long as people don't know about the availability of these technologies or science, they won't ask for it. As long as they won't ask for it, it won't exist. As long as it won't exist, no one will know about it and give services for it. So that's the problem. And to put this in the scheme of everything that's that's not ready with blockchain, here are what I see, my personal view, as the 5 big challenges that blockchain technology, and in particular, let's call it Ethereum actually, that Ethereum faces. I think working on any of this is amazing. So scalability, right? Because right now we don't have scalability. It's certainly in Bitcoin, but not in Ethereum either. BigchainDB works a lot to solve this. Usability in UX, because people don't want to use this when they need to buy Ethereum and use smart contracts and get a browser and whatever. Governance, which is a big problem because someone needs to protect people from spending money on things they don't understand, or so I believe. And we need to do forks to make decisions as a community in some joint way. Connection with the real world that doesn't exist right now. Oracleize or something like it will probably solve it. And finally, privacy. And I think all of these are very interesting. Today, I'm going to talk about the last one. Okay, and just as a final note about blockchain cryptography. So I'm kind of trashing blockchain cryptography, I know. But it is moving forward in a very fast pace, right? I mean, Bitcoin was started in 2008, 2009. And already, and it was in the beginning, there was only 70s and 80s cryptography, right? Every single scientific cryptography tool that is used inside of Bitcoin was invented in the 70s or earlier. So signatures, public key crypto, hashing, all of this was invented very, very early, right? As we go along, we're starting to see verifiable encryption, we're starting to see universal computation and virtualization, we're starting to see zero knowledge. So things are moving along and it's catching up, but it has some more catching up to do. And finally, something about blockchain as a deployment tool. So the nice thing about blockchain, from my point of view, as someone who's not a cryptographer, but interested, but knows cryptographers, is that what I like about it is cryptographers typically write papers, and these papers get buried because to deploy a paper, suppose you invented an amazing cryptographic protocol. To deploy it, you need to start writing software and getting people to use it, right? You need to write specialized software for every use case. No one in academia wants to do this. Right? These are people that teach and they write papers and they publish or perish, and they don't want to create these things. However, on a blockchain system, deploying cryptographic tools is very, very easy, right? You just fork or jerry-rig it somehow, and it's there, and you can use it as a cryptographic primitive. So blockchain is attracting quite a bit of attention from the crypto community for a good reason. It's a good vehicle for deploying these innovations, but we need to take these innovations and actually ask for them and use them and invent uses for them. So that's our role as a blockchain community. Okay. Any questions so far? doing with time? Okay, so so far I hope I convinced you why you should care about privacy on the blockchain, but I haven't told you what I mean by privacy yet, right? Or what privacy looks like or how it can be achieved. So let's talk about this. So let me talk about, right, I'm throwing out these terms zero knowledge and multi-party computation. Let me tell you what they mean. So here's what they mean. There's, I'll show you three flavors of zero knowledge, one which is not zero knowledge, one which is zero knowledge proofs, and one which is zero knowledge computations. So not zero knowledge is almost everything you Google and you find either zero knowledge which is not academic. Right? People started using, it's like the information age, which started with Claude Shannon and somehow was perverted, he hated it by the way, was perverted to all kinds of uses that have nothing to do with his scientific invention of information theory. So zero knowledge became anything that sounds good, right? So here's a quote of this zero knowledge cloud services, the best ones. Here's a quote from the website. Zero knowledge, in short, means that your passwords are not saved anywhere, not even on the servers of the provider you use. I'm not going to name and shame which website it is, but it's pretty terrible. So this is not zero. Not everything that says zero knowledge is zero knowledge, okay? So I'm going to say in particular what I mean and what the academic crypto community means by zero knowledge. There's two flavors of it. This is what is usually called zero knowledge proofs. So in a zero knowledge proof, I'll define this term, but I want to prove a claim to you, and I am stating my claim. The claim is, for example, I had enough of balance in my Zcash account. So that's my claim. And now I publish a proof, okay? This proof has the form of a string, okay? It's a potentially long string. I publish it out there, and you can verify it. You run an algorithm on this string, and this algorithm says, great, this claim is proved, and it's possible, and it's a zero knowledge proof if it's possible to prove in mathematical sense, to prove that you didn't learn anything from this exchange except my claim's validity. So you learned that I had at least 2 Bitcoins in my account, but you learned nothing else. You can't know if I had 3 Bitcoins or 100 Bitcoins or my mother's maiden name or someone else's Bitcoin balance or anything at all. You just learned this one bit of information, and I'll tell you soon what I mean by you learned only, because that's a kind of, how can you prove that you learned only something and not any other thing? It's called simulation proofs, and I'll tell you about it. But for now, that's a definition of that's the informal definition of zero knowledge proofs. I prove to you something, and you learned only that this thing is correct. Okay? And the thing that is, and the third flavor, which I am most interested in, is kind of zero knowledge proofs on steroids. It could be called zero knowledge computations. For historical reasons, it's called secure multi-party computation. There's not even the word private in there, but sometimes secure private multi-party computation. And in this task, you do something much more complicated. Each of us has an input, some input that we know, maybe our bank balance, maybe something else. And our goal is to compute a joint function of all of these bank balances. Maybe there's some, maybe whether enough of them are high or low, something like this. So we want to compute a joint function, a function in the mathematical sense of the word. And the goal is, the privacy is, that no one learns anything except the output of that function. Okay? So we compute our joint sum of bank accounts, okay? And what we all learn is just this one number. It appears in the sky, right? $1 million. And except that, none of us learned anything. We didn't learn any of our individual bank balances. We didn't learn anything else. Again, I need to define to you what it means we didn't learn anything else. We'll get to that. But that's the task of secure multi-party computation. We compute something jointly in a private way. And now if you think about it, we can get back to Tinder, right? What's Tinder? Tinder is, I said swipe right, someone else said swipe right, and I said, the direction of my swipe, someone else said the direction of my swipe, and of their swipe, and what we get as an output is whether we're a match or not, right? So what if I swiped right and they swiped right? We get that there's a match, but we already knew that we each swiped right? So we kind of learned what we were supposed to learn. And if we didn't swipe right, we don't learn anything. Right? We learned that there wasn't a match. Okay? So which we kind of knew anyway, because if I swiped right on someone and I didn't get a reply, it means they didn't swipe back. So if you think about Tinder, the task I gave you for Tinder is exactly a multi-party computation task, right? You need to compute something jointly while maximally preserving the privacy of everyone. And this is maximally preserving it because all we learn is the output, okay? Same with Gmail. We all have our emails. All of our email histories are the input to this protocol. The protocol does its magic, and the output is which mails in the future are supposed to be filtered out. And all we learn is which mails are filtered out. In fact, you can define it a bit more carefully. Each of us learns which of their emails are filtered out. And that's it, which is, again, maximally private. So I hope I convince you that multi-party computation defined in this way is exactly the solution to all of these software as a service problems I told you about. It ensures maximal privacy for anything we might want to do on the world computer. On the world computer, we all do computations. And this is a privacy-preserving computation. Okay. Any questions about this? Okay, so now I want to, in the rest of this chapter, I want to try to convince you that this is even possible. And we'll start by a very easy zero-knowledge proof. So here's where's Waldo. And the proof I want to prove to you is that I know where Waldo is, right? I mean, you could presumably look for Waldo and find him eventually, but all I want is, imagine this painting was 1,000,000 times larger. All I want is to prove to you that I can find Waldo, okay? And I want to do it in a zero-knowledge way. So without telling you anything except where I found Waldo. So let me show you the protocol, the zero-knowledge protocol for proving to you that I know where Waldo is. I take a big piece of paper, and I go in the other room, and I there's two protocols. Here's the first protocol. I take this picture to the other room, I photocopy it, and I use scissors to cut Waldo out. I come back and I give it to you, right? So I prove to you that I found Waldo, but you didn't learn anything except that I found Waldo, right? You can't find him. I mean, you learn from this how Waldo looks. I assume all Waldos look the same way. But, so that's the zero knowledge. That's the first zero knowledge protocol. I go photocopy it, cut it out, give it to you. You say, okay, maybe you cheated. So here's another protocol. I ask you to turn around. I put this photo on the floor. I ask you to turn around. I take a huge cardboard cutout, and I do this. Okay? So it's a huge cardboard cutout, so you don't know where the painting was, and I cover it, and then you see Waldo. So again, I prove to you I found Waldo, but you didn't learn anything. Right? So this is from an article called Kid Cryptography of, I think, Noam Nissan and Monino and other people. And the nice thing about this is it gives you a really good metaphor for what zero knowledge works like. It's possible, right? And that's what I want you to remember. This magical looking thing, even though it sounds insane, like a plane flying in the sky, is possible. Okay, now I am going to tell you what secure multi-party computation looks like, and then I'm going to tell you in a few words how the algorithms, how the protocols for secure multi-party computation look, and I might have to be very quick about it, probably. Okay, but first of all, I want to define what secure multi-party computation is. Kind of formal, but that's the last formal part of this talk. So here's the conditions of a correct multi-party computation protocol. Remember, these are the players, okay? Some of them are evil. Some of them really want to spy on everyone else, right? And some of them don't. So here are the conditions. With very high probability, the protocol either returns the right answer or no answer, okay? So no one can cheat. That's very important, because if people can cheat, you didn't achieve much, right? It might return no answer because some of these players are really evil, but it won't return the wrong answer, okay? Second, if all the players are honest, everything works as planned and we get the correct answer, okay? These are just correctness requirements, okay? The third requirement is the important one for us. Even if players are cheating, they will not learn anything. All of the inputs will remain private, okay? And what does it mean to remain private? That at the end of this protocol, all players, either cheating or not, will only learn the function, the output of the function, but will not learn anything else. I still need to tell you what this means, okay? So, right, so these are the three conditions. It has to be correct, no one can cheat, and no one can spy, okay? Finally, I need to tell you what privacy means. So it's a bit technical, and I won't give a full technical description of it, but here's what you should think about when you think about privacy, okay? You take the complicated protocol, right? These players communicate and they send encryptions of stuff and signatures and schemes and locked things, and it's a whole mess, right? What you do is you compare everything that the player has seen. Let's concentrate on this guy, P3. You look at everything this player has seen in the protocol. This is called the real world. Now you compare it to an idealized world. In this idealized world, there's a central player. Let's call him benevolent Google. This central player is running the best servers with the best cryptography and the best security in the world. Each of the players just sends their input, and then the Google, this benevolent Google, computes the output and sends it back to everyone. Okay? So each player, if you look at what P3 has learned in the ideal world, P3 sent their input and got the answer directly, like we do today. Right? Like from Tinder or from Gmail or whatever, we just get the correct input without knowing anything else. Right? What we do is we compare the ideal world to the real world, and we prove that anything that we could learn in the real world could also be learned in the ideal world. Specifically, we prove that statistically, we could recreate what we've seen in the real world by things we've seen in the ideal world. This was very fast. I don't know if this got through, but basically you try to prove that anything you could have learned here, you could have also learned in a world where there's a central trusted authority that's keeping perfect privacy. This is called the simulation proof, because you prove that anything you could learn here, you could also simulate in an ideal world. And in fact, simulation proofs I find to be very useful, a very useful way to think about decentralization. Because for any decentralization task, right, no one ever defines what they mean by decentralization. But simulation is a good way to define what we mean by decentralization. We say anything that could have worked in an ideal world that has a central, trusted, fully trusted authority will also recreate in the real world. And if you could do this, then you have true decentralization. And if you don't, then your decentralization is lacking in some way. So we try to simulate. This is what we do in the decentralization land, right? We try to simulate an ideal world, with a central authority, by the real world that's messy on an Ethereum. Okay, any questions about this? Okay, so I'm going to skip the use case. We've seen a use case for multi-party computation. It's Tinder, for example. And here's the theorem, right? I didn't tell you it's possible yet. So I'm going to tell you it's possible. Multi-party computation can be achieved for any polynomial type function, right? When the function f is polynomial time. Otherwise, it takes too long, so we don't care about it. And using polynomial computation under some cryptographic hardness assumptions. Okay? I won't tell you much more about this, but the bottom line of this is it's possible. Finally, I'll say a bit about how this works, very briefly. So you use something called homomorphic encryption, which is this magic box that was first shown to exist around 2000 and a bit. And this homomorphic encryption has the property that it is linear, it's closed under operations. So the encryption of a sum is the sum of the encryptions, the encryption of a multiple is a multiple of the encryptions, and that kind of thing. And then you take this function that we wanted to compute, f. You write it as a circuit, which is something you can do for any function. And then each player encrypts their input, and they just run through the function or through the circuit with all of these, where everything is encrypted throughout. And then in the end, they decrypt. Okay? So everything that goes through the circuit is encrypted. In the end, you decrypt it. That's how it works. If you want to learn more about it, ask me later. I'll give some references or tell you about it. But the point is that it works, and it can be done using homomorphic computation, encryption, which is something that exists. And also, there are other constructions. I mean, there are many constructions for this thing. Okay. Chapter 3, current state of the art in private computation. So what was done until today? So these are sugar bits, and the first application, the first real application of multi-party computation was in Denmark in 2008 for sugar bit auctions. Here's the story. There's a lot of farmers, and each of them has an allowance from the government, a mandate, to produce a certain amount of sugar bits per year. Okay? They don't all produce these sugar bits because there's children of children of children of sugar bit farmers. They don't want all these sugar bit options. They might have a small farm, they're allowed to produce more but they don't want to, or anything else. On the other hand, there are many people who want to produce sugar bits and don't have a mandate from the government. So the Sugar Bit Union, or organization, came together and asked cryptographers to design a way to optimally pass these mandates from the people who don't want them anymore to the people who want them in exchange for money, right? Now, the complicated thing is some of these players were big corporations and they didn't want anyone to know how much they are willing to pay. So what the cryptographers did is they sat with game theorists and they designed an amazing auction that what it does is every person comes and says how much the sugar bits are worth for them. I'm willing to pay $100 for the first 100 tons, then $50 for the second 100 tons, and so on. So the people who wanted some sugar bits gave how much they're willing to pay. The people who had the options and didn't want them said how much they're willing to get. Then they all put this in a magic box of multi-party computation. This was hosted on a central server, in fact, 3 central servers, one with the accountants, one with the university, and one with the organization, with the union. And they ran a multi-party computation, and the algorithm that was applied was for clearing the market, right? When you design a market, you can run an algorithm for clearing it, which means everyone gets what they're supposed to get at the first approximation. They ran this algorithm, and all they got back is, hi, sugar bit farmer, you are supposed to now sell at $50 100 tons to this guy, and another so-and-so to this guy, and that's it. That's all they learned, right? So that's amazing, because no one got their private information divulged, and everyone was happy, and the market cleared at an optimal price. Spectrum auctions, roughly the same story, run all over the world, big amounts of money. The military has frequencies they don't need anymore. Cellular operators really want these frequencies. They're willing to pay for them. They don't want to say how much it's worth for them. So you do the same exact thing. 2 complications. These are combinatorial auctions. So I am willing to pay different amounts if I get these 2 frequencies together, rather than for each of these frequencies separately. And second complication, I want to incentivize the players to not collude with each other and set prices low. So the game theorists had to devise something called truthful mechanisms, which is a way to make a game-theoretic auction that no one has any incentive to lie or collude about. So there's a marriage of mechanism design together with multi-party computation, all running on the cloud, on Amazon or whatever, because Amazon is what they have, because they're not running it on blockchain. So those are 2 real-world use cases for multi-party computation. Sadly, these are almost the only use cases for multi-party computation. And the reason is that these things have to be deployed on a case-by-case basis, audited by the government and by the organizations. These are billions of dollars that are going around. It's a whole mess, right? You have to deploy and program these things per basis, design the auction, all of that. if this is like banking 100 years ago, like IPOs 100 years ago, right? Blockchain is exactly good at making these things micro-payments and very scalable, but the problem is that blockchain will have to implement multi-party computation. Okay, what's the state of the art on blockchain? So there's a project called Enigma from MIT Media Lab. I don't know what's going on with it. It started around a year ago. And some serious looking people, and they're supposedly building a blockchain with multi-party computation enabled. I'm keeping an eye on this, but I didn't talk to them, so I don't know how this is going. These slides are going to be online, so. Zcash I already talked about. As far as I know, true zero knowledge. Yeah, I didn't look into the code or even, I think I read the white paper, but I'm not a cryptographer, so don't trust me on this. This is not a recommendation to invest or to use it, but it seems good to me. And there's a paper on a smart contract for voting. So voting actually has rather simple multi-party computation algorithms, protocols. Vlad has written one, Vlad Zamfir has written one that seems really good, and there's a paper on this as well. So these things look pretty decent, at least for voting. And I should also say that blockchain gives you some extra. So Vlad's algorithm, for example, uses incentives in addition to make the algorithm more efficient. If you get to use incentives as well as cryptography, you get extra powers, right? You get to be more efficient and stuff like that. And finally, futurism. How much time do I have? Okay. So finally, some future use cases, right? Because from all that I've seen so far, you could say, okay, great, you get some nice auctions and whatever. I want to tell you, I want to go with you into a time machine and come out in 20 years and look around at what we're seeing, and I'm going to concentrate on 2 use cases. I think there will be more, but these are the 2 that I see when I come out of the time machine. And I encourage you to go into this time machine and see which applications you're seeing of secure multi-party computation. And this is a nice theoretical exercise, but it's also a very practical exercise because you can already start working on these things right now. You go to Zuko Wilcox and you tell him, hey Zuko, can you do an ICO and can you get these crypto people to work on multi-party computation on the blockchain, because we have this amazing protocol and DApp which will be amazing and profitable, and your ICO will be great because it will enable this. And Zuko will say, I'm very busy, but in my dreams he's saying, oh yeah, I'll get right on it, and in 2 years we have a blockchain with privacy that actually works, and that will be amazing. So here are my 2 use cases, starting from the one I like less and then the one I like more. So the first one is ad options. I come out in the future. In the future, all the things are decentralized, and we're still seeing ads because people have to run websites and write content, and this content is not really using micropayments. But it's funded by ads, or we're agreeing to see ads in exchange for money, right? So you have ad options, but today the ad options are run by Facebook and Google, right? And they are very, very close gardens where the advertisers talk to Google and Yahoo and learn to Google and Facebook and learn how to run these things, and it looks like this. So there's profitable people and unprofitable people, and it's very vague demographic criteria because this is very black box, and you're dealing with people's personal data here, so Google can't divulge this too much, YouTube or whoever. And they have these ad auctions where the advertisers bid for who gets to show the ad. And this is roughly how it looks, and someone wins the auction and gets to show the ads, and these things are run billions of times per day. So these ad auctions are super high throughput, they're happening all the time, but Yahoo is getting a 45% cut of it, right? Or Google is getting, I don't know how many cuts of this. So these are very, very centralized. Now here's what the future will be like. The future will be like this, but on Ethereum or whatever blockchain there is then, with multi-party computation. Each of us puts as much information as they want on the blockchain, right, in encrypted form, and we are incentivized to put more because we're going to get more money for seeing ads. if we put more info. No one can look at our information because it's multi-party computation, right? We own it. And when an advertiser comes and wants to show an ad, they run a big auction on everyone. They say, I want to show this ad to 5,000 people, and here's an algorithm for choosing which people I show to. This multi-party computation runs on everyone's private info, which is still private, and spits out, I've shown this ad to 5,000 people and paid them the amount you prescribed. The advertiser didn't learn anything. I didn't learn anything about what the advertiser wanted. I got paid, or the website got paid for seeing ads. Everyone's happy. No one's privacy was violated in the list. Right now, all of our privacy is violated every day by Google, but Google is not using everything it knows because that's a problem, right? Because it doesn't run with multi-party computation. Once this exists, auctions will be better, but privacy will be violated less. So that's one use case. Second use case. So this is the one I like better. So we have a governance problem in the world. And to see this, just think of Trump. So he got elected. No one wants this guy, but for some reason he got elected because why? Because the election system is weird all over the world, and politicians are bought with money that comes from corporations, and the corporations also fund the media, which chooses its favorite politicians to criticize by who pays it, and everything is owned by corporation money, and the system has an incentive to keep going this way. And if you, for example, check, people think climate change is a real thing all over the world. If you ran a survey, everyone thinks climate change is a real thing. People are willing to sacrifice resources and money and everything to actually do something about it, but governments are not doing anything. Why? Because interests, right? So we have a real governance problem in that suppose we'll have governments in control 20 years from now, which I think is probably the case. Still, these governments can be run well, but they're not run well, as we can see, they're not representing the people truly. And this is what it actually looks like. So, right, so politicians are bought with money. And just to give an example for why this is so bad, so the US House of Representatives, which is my favorite democracy that's broken, the US House of Representatives has like 250 representatives, or 300. It was supposed to have 4,000 by now, by a constitutional amendment that just didn't pass, and the growth was frozen 100 years ago. The difference between having 250 members and 4,000 members is that each member represents 1 million people rather than 100,000 or 10,000 in a great world. If you represent 10,000, you can know all of them. You can go from house to house, shake hands, and just say, hey, here's my ideas, I'm a great guy. Go and represent them. If you represent 1 million people, you need to buy ads. Ads cost you money. Money can be gotten mainly from, not really from donations, but from corporations, and then you're indebted to someone. So that's the real problem. Money, I feel, is the problem, and the representatives being a limited number is the problem. This, I think, will be solved by some advanced variant of liquid democracy, let's say, but this doesn't solve everything because you still need, in any kind of democracy, you need privacy. You need to collect taxes, you need to redistribute wealth, you need to make decisions based on private information. How do you decentralize the IRS? We'll still need to collaborate on building roads in the future and on education. How do you decentralize these things? How do you decentralize decision makers? Well, you can use AI, but you still need to run this AI in a decentralized way and use people's private information. And as you know, using multi-party computation, you can run AI or machine learning algorithms or smart decision algorithms on people's private information, how much money they make, what their health is like, what they really want, what they're voting for, and so on. The algorithms can be in the clear, and the information, all the computation can be done on the blockchain, and everything can be kept privately. Okay, so to conclude, so I recommend this book. This is Yuval Noah Harari, and he wrote a book about civilization. And he thinks, and I agree, this is my version of what he thinks, that civilization is not about being stronger. Like humans, the thing that made humans rule the planet is not being stronger, and it's not really as such being smarter, and it's not even language. The thing that made them better is being able to cooperate on a massive, massive scale of millions and billions of people. That's what made them build the pyramids and build roads and build Ethereum, right? Ethereum allows for cooperation of billions of people, much like building the pyramids. But in order to allow for such a huge number of people to cooperate, and in order to decentralize all of these ways to cooperate, people expect privacy in many of the things they do. And we need to give them that. Thank you.
So we'll open the floor to questions for Elad before taking a break. Do we have any?
I have one. So I'm curious about you gave an example about advertisements using this kind of system. Can you go back a second to this slide, maybe? So
this one?
This one, yeah. So let's say I want to, do advertisement and find people who are interested into buying cat food, okay? So I can basically query the system in a way and find people who are interested in cat food, but are they revealing their identity or their something about them anyway?
Yeah. So a clever design will show people the advertisements, but it won't show anyone who they are. It will just prove in a zero knowledge way that these advertisements will sell. A less sophisticated way would be to tell the advertiser, here are the people you're targeting. But in this case, the output of the multi-party computation will be the names or the addresses of 5,000 people, and you need to deal with the implications of that, right? In all of these protocols, some information does leak, the output. And we need to deal with the fact that some information does leak. These are not perfectly private, they're just maximally private. And you need to design the protocol in a way that the leakage will be okay for the people using it.
But once, for example, I'm interested in cat food and you're doing advertisement, okay, so once you spread your advertisement, like the design, let's say, I need to run something on my machine in order to match your request.
Yeah.
And eventually get a bit of money because I'm displaying your ads.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I need to prove, if you're displaying the ad, you prove that you've displayed it, and then you get money.
Okay.
Someone was first.
Yeah, so what if in next couple of years some evil American corporation will finally scale quantum computer? How much of this goes to trash?
Quantum?
Yeah, do we have homomorphic encryption which is resistant to quantum computers? What is the primitive?
Yes. The short question is, ask me later about quantum computing. I don't think it's happening so quickly. And accept the quantum thing, accept the feasibility of it. These are all crypto assumptions. Yes, there are primitives that can be used to do multi-party computation and are hypothesized to be resistant to quantum computing. In particular, the lattice-based encryption methods that are used in the protocol I've shown are resistant, as far as we know, to quantum computing. These things are not field tested. RSA assumes factoring, and no one has broken factoring to our knowledge yet, right? But lattice-based crypto is much newer, and there's no quantum computers yet, so we don't know if someone has a machine. If someone would, after these computers are available, find an algorithm to break this. So the short answer is yes, it's fine. The long answer is cryptographers will need to work on it to make sure these things are secure to the extent of our knowledge.
I was wondering, you used Zcoin at Zcoin a few times. I think, as far as I recall from their white paper, they're using 9 different hashes to make their encryption. Do you think now at this point, because of course they're also getting old now since their white paper has been a few years, do you think now there's a protocol that is supreme to all of these older versions that will enable perhaps a slightly faster transfer than what you can do with C-hash now?
I'm not a cryptographer, and last time I was in academia was 2012, so I haven't been keeping up. So I don't know. I assume these things, the more they'll be used, the more efficient they'll be. And right now, the scaling and efficiency problems are actually in the, Byzantine fault tolerance and not in the crypto, I assume. So we need to do sharding and also deal with these crypto problems. But I assume that efficiency of the crypto primitives is less of a problem than the inherent unscalability right now of blockchains as they're implemented.
Okay.
Any other questions for Elad?
Where was Waldo?
I don't know. I didn't. In the other slide.